I should. I'm trying to whisper. She's like, yeah, I thought so. Oh.
Oh, did you put this Pfizer?
I did not. And do we have?
Yeah, it's underneath.
Oh.
Kate will let me know when we're ready.
Yep, I will.
No, oh, that charges, no. Wow.
Well, maybe. We should be.
Here we
worried.
go.
At least
Okay.
it's not me.
So it's 6:31 and I'd like to call the meeting to order. Asia, would you do a roll call, please?
Yep, Bruce Belargin,
Here.
Katie Thurman,
Here.
Roxanne Kendall. Here. Patty Jo Forsberg. Here. Lori Belargin,
Here.
Bob Gunther,
Here.
Catherine Cranston. Here.
All right, and our district mission, together we engage, educate, and empower all learners, bridging their passions to pathways to create successful and positively contribute to our local and global communities. We are to the public comment portion of the meeting then. And before we begin, I have a statement. Opinions and ideas contributed by students, parents, and staff and other citizens are valuable to the school board, which is why we include it on the agenda for every meeting. The board will receive such input without comment, but may direct the district administrator to consider such an item in an appropriate place on the agenda or a subsequent meeting. The board has set aside 20 minutes for this purpose. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes and begin by stating your name, address, and the group represented, if any. We have 2 people who contacted us. Would either of you like to begin?
No.
Gretchen?
Okay, my name is Gretchen Sid. My address is 749 220th Avenue in Somerset. I'm a parent of a Somerset High School 2020 graduate and an upcoming sophomore, and I'm here today to ask the board to reconsider the position elimination of Renee Chapik. The first time I met Renee was over 2 years ago. My husband and I were frustrated with the handling of a situation by the previous athletic director, so we asked to work with Renee instead. She agreed and gave us her undivided attention as she listened with an open mind, understanding there are multiple sides to a story. Renee treated us with the utmost respect and had such a reassuring, positive response that it instantly made us feel better and gave us hope that we would work towards a positive outcome. She had no preparation for this, which was evidence of Renee's inherent good character and ability to think and act on her feet. Renee works hard and is involved with multiple things. She's prompt with email responses on registration questions, even responding on weekends. She always has the answers and is very helpful. Renee helped me on several occasions with athletic-related matters, such as preparing a video for the football banquet. She was part of the strategic planning committee, where she offered good insight and stayed busy at rig on a PowerPoint for track. Renee was involved with various school activities for the seniors. She helped with the celebration of excellence, the delivery of signs to seniors' homes, the senior picnic, and graduation. Renee works hard at athletic games and volunteers for time. Everything Renee does is with quality and passion. One of the most important things is how loved Renee is by the students. With the students' permission, I'm going to read quotes from a student's letter to Renee published for this year's Celebration of Excellence. The impact you've made on my life is something I will always be grateful for. You're there to talk to me, build me up, and reconnect my relationships with others. There's so much that you've done for me in athletics, my personal life, and my academics. You are so open to talking to me about anything and everything. I will forever be thankful for the things you've done for me. In Renee's letter to the student, one line stood out to me as evidence of the leadership she brings to the student body. She wrote, "As you navigate this life, goals, hopes, and dreams keep us going. But as we build those in our lives, we tend to create expectations along the way. If they are for yourself, there is nothing wrong with this. But the one thing that will set you back is creating expectations for the other people and situations. In conclusion, with the uncertainty that COVID-19 brings and the added responsibilities and work that a district will endure in navigating the school year through this pandemic, I would think that one goal would be to keep staff like Renee. She's flexible, knowledgeable, and willing to help where needed. Not only this, but Renee brings experience, enthusiasm, and an open mind to this community. Renee is not afraid to speak up and stand for what is right. She has a master's degree in leadership from the University of Minnesota, has worked in education for 38 years, truly cares about the kids, and brings a fresh new perspective to this school district. It would be a loss to the students and to this community if Renee Chapek's position was terminated. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming in. And then Monet.
Okay, first off, I've been really discouraged with the transparency and open communication between the school board and the parents. It was not clear in the email July 31st that the kids would be wearing a mask while they were participating in activities that cause exertion. So for one of my questions, are you going to have these kids wearing masks while running, lifting weights, jumping, exercising, while exerting themselves? Even as Dr. Biesick had stated at one of the board meetings, he could barely breathe and took his mask down and wasn't even participating in activity. Also, along the lines of transparency communication, why haven't you brought our community into these issues face to face? We should have opportunity to meet in a big space like a gym and have parents be able to be heard, ask questions, and hear firsthand what is going on with decisions and concerns. You should be face to face with the community and not behind a computer or emails with the scoop. Just as I kept asking questions and getting directed to the scoop, still to find that my answers were not there to be answered and left unknown. And I keep hearing about the unknown we are in. How long are we going to live and sit in this unknown? As a community, we need to move forward and have a structural base for our children, which I pray is a healthy approach for their social well-being. I'm not going to go into data, numbers, statistics about the COVID-19 because the data has been compromised. False positives, being false tested, inaccurate news reporting, manipulative death certificates, and etc. I want to address the kids' social well-being and emotional health. I have hope in giving them the childhood experience they deserve. They are only children once. Being able to smile at each other, not looking at each other with confusion and wonder. Being able to hug one another when they are happy, lifting each other up when they are struggling or sad, high-fiving each other with encouragement, and not taking away their personal ways of building relationships. I can find numerous videos of rioters and protesters standing up for their rights, burning flags and Bibles with no concern of COVID. They are allowed to not social distance, give high fives, be in crowds, and stand up for their beliefs and rights. But we're not standing up for our children and their emotional well-being and giving them a childhood and school experience with normalcy. Besides my concerns of their well-being and emotional state, how about them breathing in their own bodily waste, wearing masks with bacteria-breathing ground? What happens when a kid sneezes? They blow their nose and wash their hands, then put on a mask they snot it all up in? Who's going to purchase all these masks? Where's the documentation that these masks are highly effective? What are we going to keep teaching our children? To live in constant fear of contamination? And why are we letting governments discern our kids' health, mandate, and regulate in regards to health? If you want to send your child in a mask, by all means, you have that right. But requiring students to wear a mask is about our children's right to an education, allowing decisions such as these left to the parents, not to the government or local officials. So I'm asking you, please fight for our children to have a great, comfortable experience in building positive relationships at school, being children. Thank you.
Thank you. Abby, is there anything you'd like to say about the seclusion and restraint report?
Not too much, pretty quick. As you can see, we did a lot of work this year. The teachers did a huge amount of work on really examining and looking at behaviors and working through them and coming up with some new solutions, so that's why our numbers really decreased. I know we had a shorter year, but it was on the track. They did a lot of work around behaviors and assessing behaviors and coming up with some new solutions. So kudos to the teachers, and again, made some positive relationships with outside agencies that are supporting some of the students as well. So that's the numbers.
Thank you. Did anybody have any questions or comments for Abby? All right, let's see. Dave, I saw out there for the meal prices. I did have a conversation with him about why there were two options.
Dave. Yeah.
Yep, please, thank you.
So you saw the proposed prices. Two options. And both of them keep, well, the first option keeps prices for the most part status quo, and the second option is a reduction. And so we've had 3 years with Taher now, and every year they have run the program such that we've increased our fund balance. And in addition to that, we had the Avian settlement from a few years ago. And so all this combined now, where we haven't had a fund balance for a long time, and now we do, and in fact, it's bigger than we're permitted to have. And so we are looking for ways to reduce that, one of those being, if possible, if permitted, to reduce prices. It's good for the community. It is good for our comparison to other districts in CISA for meal prices. One factor that comes into that, though, is that the USDA is currently in discussion with DPI about whether we're permitted to reduce prices from our previous pay prices without having to then make that difference up from Fund 10. So we would recognize the loss, but then we would still have to transfer money from Fund 10, and it wouldn't do anything for our fund balance in Fund 50, and we'd be spending money out of Fund 10. So that's why that's option 2. We're currently waiting for additional guidance from DPI. They're, like I said, talking to USDA. If we get that by the end of this month, we can proceed with option 2. If we don't, we'll plan to proceed with option 1. We are permitted to change the reduced price from that reduced amount to 0. We have a waiver for that, so that would not have any effect on Fund 10. So that's already in option 1. Any questions about the thought process here?
You'll know by the end of the month, or maybe.
I think our timeline is the end of the month, just so parents can plan. Obviously, it won't be an increase, so we know that for sure. But I think we just kind of run out of time at that point for letting people know what it is actually going to be, and so we'll just proceed at that time. Like I said, I've been talking to DPI. They're waiting for guidance from USDA. They're in conversation. It's one of those things where if you have a positive fund balance, you're able to not be forced to increase your prices like you used to be. But districts are asking, okay, for this 1 year, then can we just reduce our prices? And so, since the food service fund, it's revenue from the federal government, it's considered a federal fund. You can't use federal funds to make up that deficit. So they're in discussion saying, okay, just for this 1 year, can we consider that and use that source of funds for this? That would benefit us in that area.
And families.
Yeah, all of us.
It would be nice if we could go with option 2 and reduce them overall.
So Dave, if we hear from DPI later, could we change the prices during the school year?
Yeah, we could do that at our discretion, sure.
Okay,
And then obviously it would just be communication
Right.
changes.
good. Anybody else? Okay, thank you.
So we'll plan to act on this by the end of the month for publication purposes, and then if something changes, I'll bring it back to you.
Thank you. Item 6 on the agenda is the student handbooks, and Sarah is with us remotely. Would Sarah
Hi, everybody.
like to start? Because you had the all-school handbook?
Sure. Yep, I can get going on that. So we all worked on it together. I was just the one who ended up writing the memo.
Okay,
So just to take you through, a lot of what we did this year for the all-school handbook was look through it. It was pretty minor changes overall, but we did make some COVID considerations as far as, because we're looking at not using lockers at the beginning of the year, we changed and made a note about the fact that backpacks and purses, that sort of thing, will be allowed throughout. The bus transportation, we had this submitted to you before the governor's order came down, but that we will be requiring to wear a mask on the bus, but social distancing cannot be maintained We made just some strike-throughs regarding the fact that now all students 512 will have access to computers, so we aren't going to have a designated lab at the middle school, so we struck that. Couple of just small changes, tweaks really to the dress and grooming regarding backpacks, that sort of piece. And then, again, COVID notes under visitors, because it will be only essential this year, as well as student attendance. That's been a big, question. What our plan as an administrative, the three principals are, is to work with families on a case-by-case basis through this, because we really don't know what may or may not happen at all. And so our plan going forward is to work with families if attendance becomes an issue. Attendance at student events, we just make sure that it matched what was in the current athletic and activities handbook, because the verbiage was a little bit different. So we worked to make sure that that was the match there. So you'll see that on there. We changed the time for tardiness to class to reflect our bell schedules. And that really and truly was our biggest changes for the all-school handbook. So were there any questions for any one of us about that?
I had a question, Sarah, about the, I think it was in the grooming part. Because I think it says, it says something about items that cover the face.
Was it on the one that's in there, or is that another one? Yep, so we'll put a COVID note in there about that. Would that be an acceptable change?
Sure.
We just put a COVID note on there?
Yep.
Okay. Yep.
Thank you.
Easily do that, thank you. Are there any other questions about the all-school one?
All right, thank you.
Good. Thank you. All right.
And then would you like to talk about the elementary one?
Do you want me to go to elementary?
Sure.
Okay. Again, my changes were mostly wordsmithing, my own language, because this is started my third year, so kind of went through readability, especially like the rewording of the who we are section. Updated the year, changed to reflect new school start times. On page 2, changed, adding the infinite campus, changing the way we do newsletters to the scoop, to let parents know about the scoop, so that was a change. I took the same COVID note that was on regarding attendance that's in the all school and just repeated it there, so parents had it in 2 places saying that we will be working with families on this. Changed tardy times and times, breakfast times and such to reflect the new 8:10 to 3:10 time. Again, kind of just edited the information for visitors that we will only have essential visitors in the building this year. Parent pickup, tried to clearly, and I'm coming in that we have a new parent pickup lot and a new bus lot, so that parents cannot go into, they need to go in the front of the building lot, and that will take some time, but I think we did try to spell it out so people would understand. And then the other big thing is that no homemade treats. We've kind of let homemade treats go, or let them, and we really are saying no homemade food this year. Everything has to be packaged. No buffets for the staff, like nothing. Everything has to be packaged or store made. And asking kids to bring drinking bottles or refillable water bottles or disposable water bottles. We had a section in there on being able to bring pets. I eliminated that. We haven't brought pets, and we have so many kids with allergies and fears, and so I eliminated the pets section. Unless it's like, I know we have a therapy, like dogs that come for therapeutic, but that's a different thing. Any questions or clarifications?
I had a question on the tardiness.
The what?
The tardiness one. It seems like there was is that where it was, or was it somewhere else? There was here it is, I'm sorry, it's on the first page, our school day.
Will you say it again, I'm sorry?
It's on the
Yep.
very front first page.
Yep.
The section that starts our school day.
Yep.
And you have in the first line that students should arrive between 7:50 and 8:10.
So we've always kind of given a 20-minute buffer
Uh-huh,
that kids can come in and, you know, go into school and get set, ready for the day before the school day actually starts at 8:10.
uh-huh. But then, like 3 lines down, you say they must not be dropped off before 7:55.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, so it is supposed to be 7:50?
Yes,
Okay,
sorry,
yep, all right, thank you.
got it. Anything else?
Not that I saw.
Thank you.
Did anybody else have any questions? All right. Sarah, you want to do middle school?
Absolutely. All right, so, again, just a few changes. Obviously, we changed the year. Last year was our first full year with doing a whole lot with restorative practices where we really implemented and really worked to handle when students make behavior mistakes differently. And so I wanted our handbook to reflect that. So it struck out the parts about the tracking forms that we were using previously and put in that restorative language. So we had a lot of success with that last year, and the work that we're doing would continue. We just wanted it to make sure that it was reflected in our handbook. Assignments, notebooks, and agendas, they're going to be available this year, so I wanted it to be reflected. A lot of our students did not use it, so all of our 5th graders will receive an agenda this year, and then students who would like to continue using one will also be, there will be one made available to them. Based on the feedback last year when I took teacher and student feedback on that, it was not something they were using regularly, so we just reduced the number, and I wanted that reflected. Attendance policies, I added the nature of the COVID piece, like in our all schools. We will have a new person in our middle school office as a new office aide, so hopefully you'll approve that later tonight. Thank you. And her name is reflected in there. Then tardiness is just shifted from 8:15 to 8:30. We, like the elementary, have a completely different look to how parents will drop and where our buses will come from. And so now students will be dropped off in what is the front of our school, which was formerly the back in our parent line. Our drop-off time is starting at 7:45. And we'll, again, that will be signage and working through that as parents adjust to our new, the new way we drop off. And then entering our school and the hallways, our bussers will come in now from the spot kind of up where the hill used to be with the high school kids. And so they will enter in where our music wing doors are. And then any kids, again, being dropped will come in the door, which will be our main office door. That's going to look a little different as we try to separate kids when they come in, but had to make those shifts for our new drop-off pickup areas. And just another COVID note regarding essential visitors. End of day routines, just given our different entrances now, put verbiage in there to reflect that. And then Intimate Campus, just making sure parents are aware that's where all of our communication about school and the district comes from. Passive, just a striking out the free movement part about around the building. We're working, teachers are really good, a lot of them have alternate passes, so we're working with those pieces. Phone calls, messages were just time changes. And then again, wanted the personal communication device process to match our restorative pieces. We did a lot of this last year, and so now it's just put in our handbook where we work through some restorative pieces with kids instead of just slapping a detention on them. So, are there any questions about the changes to our handbook?
Looks like we're good. Thank you, Sarah.
Yep, thanks everyone.
Shannon?
Yes, so I submitted 4 handbooks for your review. And as you saw from my memo, I mean, really there is not a lot that changed. As Sarah and Pam have said, most of our changes were due to COVID and just adding in some added verbiage and some of our existing procedures. The attendance thing, I just want to reiterate that as well. We've had a lot of discussion of how to be really flexible with families and students. I've already had a lot of questions come to me from parents and high school kids about attendance, kind of proactively, and I think that's because over the last couple of years, we've really kind of hit it hard regarding all the attendance pieces and all the things that kind of come with that. So trying to ease a little bit of anxiety there regarding if things come up. As Sarah said, we're going to work with families individually and kind of go case by case versus trying to policy everything to death within the handbook. So I'll just kind of go one by one. So starting with our overall student handbook. Again, both Pam and Sarah have mentioned many of the common changes that we've all kind of made regarding attendance, adjusting our start and end time a little bit, addressing the use of backpacks to start the year since we won't be using our lockers. Kind of a new change this year, we took out the line that we had in there regarding no hats and headgear. That over the course of time has ended up being what we like to call artificial conflict, where we're spending a lot of time navigating hats and we'd rather spend our time putting our energy someplace else instead of kind of chasing that down. So again, not a lot has changed. I think just added in some added COVID verbiage to help get us through the year. So before I move to the next one, maybe we'll just start with that one. And any questions there? Okay.
Can I ask a question on that? Or can I?
No.
I cannot, okay, that's my
Sorry.
question.
Okay. So virtual ed, this essentially looks identical to the version that we approved last year. Virtual ed, really, this handbook is designed because we use Wisconsin virtual system for online classes. As we get a little bit further into our virtual academy and get a little bit more familiar with Edgenuity, this may end up kind of phasing itself out over time. We certainly were not in a position we were prepared to do that heading into this year, so we left it. We may still have some students that need to access classes through WVS, so I want to make sure that we had the procedures in here. Again, you can see the only thing I changed was the year. There was nothing else in there because most of that handbook is dictated by WVS itself. So not a lot of changes there. We want to make sure we kept it here as an option for kids just in case as we kind of move into some potentially uncertain times with distance learning. So the Achieve handbook, again, not many changes there either. As you've heard me talk about, we're switching our platform from Odyssey-ware to Edgenuity. And again, there must have been a piece in there that we didn't catch last year regarding replacing some verbiage from behavior referral to some of our more restorative language. Again, not many changes there. As you'll see, and hopefully you'll approve later tonight, we do have a new staff member taking over that program. So there may be some additional changes down the road, but for right now, looks very similar to the one that you approved last year. And with our Somerset Virtual Academy handbook, really brand new first draft. I borrowed multiple other successful academies and really kind of looked at what other people had put together and put our Somerset spin on it in terms of how it's going to function here. A year from now, I might come back and we might do all kinds of striking out and editing, but for right now, this was just kind of a first run. Obviously want to get your thoughts on it and hear any additional edits or anything that you may have, but I'm very aware that that one may be a work in progress, especially as we kind of get moving with the ebb and flow of how that program will work. So I am out of handbooks, so thoughts?
Did anybody have any questions or comments for Shannon?
For the virtual academy, is that good for this year, hypothetically, or are you gonna do another edit prior to?
So my answer today is that I think it's probably fine now for this year. If we get moving and we get kind of an influx of students, that want to be involved in that academy, we may bring something else back to you and say, hey, we found that this was a big miss, let's add this in, that kind of thing. So maybe that'll just be some ongoing dialogue that as I keep you guys updated with the progress of that program and bring to you any changes. But I would say for now at the moment, I think it's okay and fits our needs, but as it grows and changes, maybe. So.
Anybody else? All right, so these handbooks will be brought back to the August I think
17th
17th
meeting, yep.
meeting for approval. Policies are next. And the policy committee met prior to this meeting and have some recommendations for the policies. Patty, Joe, would you like to
Sure.
begin?
Yes. All right, so for policy 0167.3, the public participation at board meetings, one of the things we talked about was emails and call or voice messages. And so what we thought we could put into this one is just a statement that says any individual who is unable to be present but would like to provide a public comment will do so in email or message. And then to the email that we say. And then it will be provided, and it'll be attached to the agenda in the minutes. We will no longer be reading the emails or playing the messages, because if they're not here, we will get a copy of it as a board, but we don't need to play it at the meeting. We can all see it, and everyone, the public can see it also. That's kind of what we thought. It might save some time and allow us to people still have their public comments and still be attached to the things it needs to be attached to. So it'd be on the minutes prior to the meeting and on the agenda, or on the agenda and the minutes. Any questions?
And Tasia, I've got exact wording.
Yeah,
That
okay.
I can type and send to you
Okay.
for that. Does the rest of the board have any questions or comments?
I
or-
do. It says all comments should be limited to 3 minutes per person per topic with a maximum of 20 minutes. The 20 minutes is total, correct?
Correct.
So we could have 7 people talking 3 minutes each,
And that would be
and that's the
21
max.
minutes. But it does also say in the policy at the discretion of the board president. I think, however, if we have multiple parents wanting to speak on a certain topic, perhaps that would be an indicator to us that we need to schedule a special session for public input. What are your thoughts?
So how would we know, what would be the threshold? Over 7?
I don't know. That would be something that we should talk about. Mark?
Well, you could take it situation by situation, just say if that happens where you have multiple people, as a board, you could decide, we'll extend it to 30 minutes tonight. Or we could, you could do that listening session piece that I mentioned a couple sessions ago about beforehand also. If you
Because
didn't
at the
want-
very bottom says, except when the board schedules in advance. So if the board president had noticed that there were 7 or more people, you would in advance either schedule a separate listening session or extend it beyond the 20 minutes in advance. Because I guess what I'm wondering is I don't want to sit at a meeting and have somebody going on and on and on, and it's being extended, and we didn't have an advance notice that it was gonna be extended.
Right.
If someone's gonna be extended, it should be an advance notice. Because I think that's where we get into some tricky, we're allowing some people 5 minutes, some people 3 minutes.
Well, it gets to be
Some people 14.
inconsistent and, right, like there's some favoritism going on, so there's.
So I just wanna make
and that's
that
come
really
up-
clear.
And that's come up in the past.
Okay, so you're not particularly talking about the 20 minutes total, you're talking about the 3 minutes per individual?
Mhm. And if in your mind, that's gonna go over the 20 minutes, then we need to schedule something in advance.
Do you mean over the 3 minutes?
Well, if we have 7 people that are doing 3 minutes each, that would be our max threshold for having it be in this form. In my mind.
Sometimes we don't know until that day. So then, Mark, if we were having if we ended up with a lot of people at a meeting who wanted to speak, would the advance notice be that we'll schedule another meeting?
Well, you can always do that, but, as you mentioned, these things just pop up sometimes. You get, let's just say you have 10 people that want to speak. Okay, we're gonna have to limit you to 2 minutes each. You can do that also. So,
Yeah, part of the problem, from my perspective, is if you have people who feel strongly about a topic and they show up to a meeting and you don't necessarily know in advance, of course, so if the board chair just says, well, there are 10 of you, and so we're going to schedule a special listening session, well, then they have to come back another day. And that's not very responsive either. So I think there needs to be that flexibility. Catherine, from what I hear you saying is if there are only 5 people who show up, that they be given the same amount of time
Yep.
each.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I think that is the normal practice. I think what you're probably referring to is what happened when Dr. Ramsey didn't make it on the agenda. And it was unfortunate that it was left, looking as it did. But I don't think that's a normal thing either. I remember one other board meeting where something was actually put on as a topic, only it wasn't done by the board member. And, yeah. But I don't know how the rest of you feel really about, or if we can make sure that Tasia could do it. But so say if somebody does want to attach a voice message, if they shoot the email, to Lori and or Mark prior to the meeting, I mean, it's gotta be a reasonable amount of time prior, that it would be, either that or an email would be attached, so that we would have time to look at it as a board and the public would too. And then also attach those same things to the minutes of that meeting. So I don't know how everybody feels about that, but I thought it was a good compromise. Because I wasn't really fond of playing those recorded statements. Or, but I want to hear them. That's a whole new way of doing public comment for me.
How would this policy address if someone wanted to address us via Zoom?
We don't have anything on Zoom since we don't have Zoom meetings yet. So wouldn't that have to be looked
Well,
at?
we could easily get somebody up on Zoom right there on
Well,
the screen.
it does, it says, any individual who is unable to be present either in person or remotely. And remotely could be by phone, as we've had, or it could be via Zoom, as we've had in the past as well. So it does recognize that.
Okay.
The change was
Just wanna make that clear.
specific to people who emailed in, rather than having to read the email. Because maybe it was a 3-minute email when they were zipping through it, but then we read it and it takes, 7 minutes. Or the phone messages, because then we're not cutting off the message that they want. They can leave a long message, we still have it in minutes, we still hear it, but it's not over any limit. If that makes any sense.
so Lori, Tasia has a comment.
Yes.
Just a couple of things. I would be hesitant about the voice recordings only because we typically haven't linked anything to our minutes in the past. Not saying that we couldn't, but just the way that they're published, it may be difficult to publish a voice memo if we were putting the minutes in print anywhere. So I would suggest that maybe it be a written statement versus a voice memo if they're unable to attend remotely. On that same note, if we were to link them to the minutes aren't public until the following month's board meeting, so the public wouldn't have access to that.
No, they would be linked to the agenda, and they shall be attached to the agenda and noted in the minutes, the way that you
Okay.
have been noting
Okay.
public comment.
That's great, and I didn't understand that part.
Is there a problem with attaching an audio to the agenda, though?
it shouldn't be,
Okay,
but I don't wanna say for sure, I shouldn't have an issue with it, but I wanna confer with IT to be sure,
okay,
that wouldn't have any access issues or anything.
okay. So this is a first reading, and the policy will come back at the August 17th meeting. So can you check with the IT
Mhm.
department and let
Yep.
us know?
Yep.
So is there anything else people would like to talk about with this policy? Does that seem like a good compromise to the rest of the board with people who can't be here either remotely or in person? All right. The second policy on our agenda is the emergency nursing services. And there was a current one and the last draft of 2018. And when the committee got together, we were very familiar with this draft because we remembered working on it. And Patty Jo, do you want to talk any more about this?
What we felt after reading through it, so the one that was on that was last modified in 2018, wasn't what we went over in the 2018. So there was two actual, right, there was two.
Yep, so we're talking about the one with the green and the red.
Yep, so the one with the green and the red that had the last modified by Tasia, July 31st, 2018, that's one that we're working from. We added at, next to the school nurse, it's because that says this policy and the additional policies providing the provision of emergency nursing services to students has been developed and reviewed by, and we X the school nurse and medical advisor. And then also further down, we have, upon the recommendation, or no, the nurse and medical advisor shall review and evaluate emergency nursing services each year. To reflect that, what that position is supposed to do.
Any questions on this policy? And again, it's a first reading, so, if you do think of something, you can contact Patty Jo or Katie or myself, and we'll bring this back to the regular session for approval. And then the last policy on the agenda has to do with, it's 8450, control of casual contact communicable diseases. And we've had emails going back and forth with our attorney regarding this that were emailed out to all of you. It was a week or two ago, so it was a while ago.
21st.
The 21st of July. So there are some things that we should discuss before we move further with this policy. So in the third paragraph, it talks about the board shall follow all state statutes and health department regulations. And one of the questions that Trevor sent back to us was if we wanted to include national and county. Do you have any thoughts about that? It says health department. It doesn't say, it says state statutes and health department, so does that mean state health department? Does it mean any health department? Does it mean county health department?
I think you would want to, in this situation, put both in there because our county health department never was given the opportunity to make any decisions. It just came straight from the state. So in light of that, if we had county in here, then I don't know that, would we want to cover all of our bases if we wanted to follow something?
And then the other question that Trevor brought up that he wanted us to talk about was, what if there's a conflict?
I bet that's what it's written as it is, because it's health leaves it a little bit more open, and sometimes that's not a bad thing.
I agree, Kathleen.
That's maybe why it just says health. because sometimes leaving it a little vague is not always a bad thing.
You know, that's kind of a sticky thing we're dealing with right now as superintendents, and especially in the MBC. I mean, we're meeting at least a couple times a week. We got St. Croix Health on the phone with us a couple times a week, but these other counties are getting different directions, recommendations and what have you, and frankly, we haven't gotten anything, you know, as far as, here's what we think you should do, other than up here, because they're pushing it all back on us. We're trying to stay as consistent as possible with all the schools in the MBC, but when we start getting all the different factions voicing in here, it makes it really hard, because we even see some things that are happening now that, because Pierce County says this, and our county doesn't say it, so we're just trying to be as consistent as possible and not lock ourselves into something that could prevent us from doing that.
Did Trevor at all say we had to change it, or can we just stay with this?
No, he recommended that we address it because it's so vague and open to interpretation. Well, I mean, he said that in his email, that
But I can't remember it.
we are leaving our district open to liability by how it could be interpreted.
So
And if we prepare, hopefully have him prepare a more clear, policy that, that will provide us the protection we need.
I would recommend going with whatever Trevor really thinks the direction we need to go, because he's the one, if we do run into trouble, he's the one that's got to defend us.
And he just wanted, you know, he wanted to just clear up a couple things. There is some language in there, but he wanted the board to determine these couple of things as a body, you know, kind of generally what we want to see. And that's hard without him here, explaining it better. You know, for instance, it says, you know, like when it talks about public health, oh, now I'm spacing out on the word.
Protocols?
In the policy. Protocol. There is nothing that is labeled protocol. So, I mean, you can use a generic term of protocol, but it would be better if we were just clear and staff is clear on what we're following.
So Trevor is recommending county health department, is that correct?
That's what he
That's
said
what
in
I
his
see.
email. Makes
So
sense
let's
to
go
work
with what
with
the
and try
attorney
to
says.
follow county health department guidance.
And the DPI, oh no, I'm sorry. And then what we do if there's a conflict, you know, between the two. So if you've got DPI out there, you've got the state, like the executive orders, and then public health, if there's a conflict between them. And, you know, public health is our St. Croix public health is closer to us, especially in this particular time. It would be nice to have some language about with guidance.
All right, thanks, Katie.
Okay, sorry.
So what would you like to do here? Would you like to have Trevor come and talk to us? Would you like to do a Zoom meeting? Would you like Trevor to write some language and send it to us?
Well, he says it right here in this paragraph under, it says right here. It makes sense to work with and try to follow county health department guidelines.
Yep.
So if that's what we go with, that's what you would probably put in there.
And he also talked about the word protocols and substituting something like guidelines or recommendations.
So does it say state statutes and county health department guidelines? Is that just the difference?
He says, try to follow county health department guidance.
I don't think he was meaning to the exclusion of everything else, just to be clear.
Yeah, I think it was in the last sentence of the policy, it says protocols established by county health, so rather than have protocols, have something a little more firm.
That's fine.
I mean, Dr. Bezek stated the whole time we're waiting for county to kind of give us some guidance, so I mean, we might as well have the county help in there because that's, you know, we're doing stuff that the state is asking, but we're also going to the county, so.
Lori?
It's
Yes.
county.
You know, a good example of it was just today, you know, with the county health meeting, it got really hot there because we're not getting any protocols or any pieces. And the example is used that over in Minnesota, you know, it's all gauged on per county as far as the rate of infections and what have you. And, you know, so there's a protocol on how to really gauge if you're gonna be open or you're gonna go virtual or what have you. And that's kind of the thing we wanna see is what's the plan? You know, what's the plan? And, you know, it's been 6 months now, we haven't gotten a plan. So that's where we're stuck right now, but, you know, we use, CDC, we use St. Croix Health, you know, right now we're using everything we can get to get information, so if it's all inclusive, that's great, we're gonna use it. You know, the only time we're gonna get in trouble is if there's a recommendation comes out of St. Croix County, we don't do it. And something happens, then we're liable, so if we include them all in there, that's a good thing.
So I feel this is as clear as mud.
Join the club.
Does anybody want to add anything before the committee tries to work with this? Bob, you look like you're thinking.
I'm not thinking. I don't
Sounds
know
like
if
we
it's
want-
just better to have him address us on it, so we're not, I feel like we're talking in a circle right now, so.
So then
If we
is
want the
your-
clarity in his advice, then I don't understand why we wouldn't just engage him on the conversation and get it straight from him.
So are you saying
I
have
agree with Bob.
him come and talk to us, or are you saying have him write a policy?
I would say have him come and talk to us, or remotely, or however, so we can, and ask him the very questions we're asking tonight to him. So we do have that clarity.
Okay. So would you like to do that at the September work session, which is August 31st? Okay, we'll see if we can get Trevor scheduled to Zoom in with us. Does anybody else have
That's
any
great.
questions or concerns about this one? All right. Item 8 on the agenda, district administrator goals. Mark?
Yeah, so, easy to get my note, I cleaned up a few pieces on here, and, again, these are drafts, and basically what they are is what we didn't get to finish this last year in 1920, pushing some of them forward to 2021. And as in my notes, the one that is just really gonna be tricky is the student achievement, because we still don't know, you know, my student achievement goals were all based off the school report card, and there isn't one this year. We don't know if there'll be one this next year. You know, this could, you know, explode on us here in the next few weeks as far as school could be virtual again. So with that goal, there needs to be a student achievement goal, but I don't know what it's gonna look like right now. So that one's gonna have to, you know, stay soft for a little while till we determine what standards we're using and what's measurable for us. Because I don't know everything about Edgenuity, and if that's our system, how are we going to show student growth or district gain or what have you. So that's the only one that's really kind of up in the air for me. The other ones are just, the strategic plan goal, which is, the first one is just carrying those forward. The second goal, the bridging Somerset, again, who knows where that's gonna go if we can't have gatherings, if you don't come back to school. We certainly wouldn't be engaging that group. The third one is that student achievement goal. The fourth one, the human resources, that can be done, whether we have students or not. I mean, we'll get that cleaned up. That's about the only one that's in concrete right now. Everything that is relevant and extremely important to this coming year really isn't in a goal format, because it's really monitoring, all the different information sources we have to get the doors open the right way. And that's, I don't know if we put that down as a goal, because it just has to happen. That's survival for us. So I'm really open if there's any other area that you think that we could develop a goal around. Now, I took these out of the DAPES format and put them into just a SMART goal format, which I'd used before, which I think everyone understands how those are. It's a little bit more clear, for me it is anyway.
I'm just gonna throw this out there, Shannon, tell me if it would be stupid, but if we're looking at a time to a student achievement, could we tie it to graduation rates?
Do that?
I mean, because that's gonna still be.
This past year, 100%.
Right.
I didn't hear-
100% graduation rate. That's your student achievement goal.
They're supposed to be achievable.
Well, that's what we achieved this last year.
That's why we're here. It's 100% why we're here.
There you go.
If we can write some criteria around it as far as, who knows what's gonna happen this year as far as kids, what if kids opt not to come back here? Go back and
You can
practice.
come up with some baseline data on like October 30th or something.
There you go. Do that.
Again, that's part of the school report card is graduation rate. That affects our grades.
But it's one we can pick out and we can actually monitor that.
Again, I'm not totally convinced we're gonna be back face to face. That's what I'm striving for, but this thing's getting so political because we're okay and we wanna go back face to face. It may come down to another governor order that, Madison, Milwaukee can't do it, so no one's doing it. That'll change our game, and how we.
Well, we're talking about your goals, let's.
Yeah, well, I'm saying that's, I'm tying that in, it's hard to get a student achievement goal around us when we don't know what we're going to be held accountable for.
Could you still do an achievement gap from the start of school to first semester to second semester, final semester, to see where the kids are in the individual classroom?
Well, student
To
gain,
make sure
we can keep track of student gain.
those things, so forget the standardized testing, forget the ACT, forget we just create something unique to the school.
We're gonna have to, and that's what, Tricia's been out the last couple weeks, and I wanna sit down with her and see just what assessments we're gonna use this year and how we can tie it into this. Cause I agree totally with you that we should be able to, but again, if we end up virtually, are we gonna go progress or are we gonna regress?
But no matter what the growth is, we can always dictate or denote the times. I mean, I feel like everyone's gonna have some regression at some point just because of the times that there are right now, because it's so wishy-washy, that I think even for a goal, we would have to have an asterisk next to it with the year that states, if they were forced to stay home, classes started at home and then there's a lot of change for the students. I understand the goals but I don't think we can put a lot of weight in that, what we can measure right now since there's so much unknown. it's really hard to say.
Yeah, that's why I think this one's gonna have to stay soft till the end of the month probably, until we get a clear direction, because I'm not planning on coming to you until that next meeting saying, here's what we gotta make decisions on. You know, I mean, we got 2 weeks left, 3 weeks left, we gotta do this, knowing that, you know, again, somebody might pull a plug on us, you know, in between, but there's things that we have to make some decisions on, and that 17th date is probably it, just again. If there was a goal, get us through this next year, I could live with that, you know, and that's gonna be my personal goal. So if you just wanna shoot me some ideas, and be more than happy to incorporate it in here or a different goal altogether.
So Bob, I think what you were talking about, where you're measuring student growth, the instrument that we're currently using for this, I believe, please help me here, is FastBridge.
Right.
And if we are not having school in person, can FastBridge assessments occur?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. Say the last part.
If school is in
Yeah.
distance learning,
Yeah.
can FastBridge assessments occur?
If we're at home distance learning, can we use FastBridge? Sorry, okay.
Good luck.
I would say not until they they would have to, as a system, create the ability, I'm sorry, Shannon. I didn't mean to
No,
interrupt.
go ahead.
But they would need to have to create a system that, for us to do that virtually, or
That you,
from home.
FastBridge would.
Yeah,
Right.
it would have to come from FastBridge, and to my knowledge, they have not done that. So, we haven't taken it, at least at the elementary level, since winter. So if we do come back, and I would not advocate testing anybody for a really, really long time, but if they do come back, we could do like a fall data look or a winter to winter, but we will have no spring data.
Right, yeah.
But that data would not be valid for
It wouldn't
kids
be
taking
valid.
it at home. They're teacher proctored.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can't just send it to the kid and have the kid take it at home.
Well, that's why I was asking.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
didn't see
no.
how you could either. All right, so any other questions or comments from Mark on goals? So these also will be brought to the regular session for approval? All right. Mark, construction update, item number 9 on the agenda.
Okay. For the construction update, we sent out a memo today, just late in the afternoon, about protocols with the whole mask situation from the governor's order and the exceptions that, you probably saw Dave when he came in here and talked, it's one of the exceptions to this in an educational setting. If you're presenting, if you're personal or physical distancing, you can remove your mask to speak and then put it back on. So I'm gonna exercise that piece of that, just so you saw what Dave was doing and what I'll do here. But construction-wise, we had owners meeting last Thursday. We had a POC meeting today. Both Bob, I don't know, were you on there today?
No.
Okay, but I'm going to ask you to talk a little bit about the roundabout though. Anyway, but Bruce and George were also on that meeting. Just a light overview here. The finishings in the school are going to be almost complete by the 14th. We're talking ceilings, floors, be ready for punch list items that next week. The ponds, we've had a lot of discussion on that. The elementary pond over here and the one down by the middle school were supposed to be ponds that the water dissipated or saturated into the ground, but they're not, they're holding water. One of the mistakes up in the elementary was that the inlet is here and the outlet is here. Okay, they're fixing that. They're not getting the infiltration rate that they thought they would get, so there's water going to constantly be in these ponds. But the discussion was, from the county and the village, they're allowing us to have wet ponds now, so the whole infiltration thing is out. Now these two have been holding water. Okay, if we leave them like that as water holding ponds, we'll get a credit of about $19,000. If we want to guarantee them to hold water, they will dig them out, pack 2 feet of clay, I think, and that guarantees to hold water if there's not a drought. So the way we looked at it is they're holding water now. Why would you pay 120 grand? I think that was the number, wasn't it, George, between the two? To do the same thing they're doing right now, so we'll take the credit. So they are gonna be wet ponds unless we get a summer where there's no water, and we're gonna fence them off also. And we haven't decided on the fencing yet, I don't believe there.
No, but that'll take away from the credit. So
Right. Yeah.
That's not in the credit, so they're gonna have to add a fence. We were just looking at the one tonight, you're probably 1,000 feet of fence on the one and another, I don't know,
Probably double.
2,000, yeah, 1,500, 2,000 fence, I mean, you're 3,000 feet. And they'll spend with just probably a 5-foot high fence is what they were saying.
Yeah, it's just a chain
Black
link
chain
of
link.
something that'll go around there. But I don't think we'll do anything at the middle school, little one there, that flows pretty well. Yeah.
You'd fence?
Huh?
You'd fence around the ponds? Good?
How come the village doesn't have a fence? Do we have to fence?
Insurance?
No, we don't have to fence.
Well, I think with the incline here, the
We're
steepness.
just saying this is right by the elementary school.
Yeah, I mean, they're gonna be deep ponds, they're gonna be deep ponds, and so, especially the one by middle school, that's a steep bank coming in there.
But
If somebody
no,
gets near that, they're gonna fall in.
we don't have to. I've been on jobs where you don't fence and the walkway comes right up to the, I mean, lakes, you know, water 2 feet right down to the water and you don't have to have a fence. That's just a,
So it's a safety precaution that we wanna take.
Yes.
I think so. We don't want any kids just
Right.
running, playing in the pond.
So, that's what's happening with the ponds. And I mentioned that they'll have some, their substantial finishing work done by the end of next week, and then they'll start their punch lists out on that. 2 things, well, the air handlers, they're shipping, they'll be here next week, and that's kind of the big holdup thing right now, but they're on top of it, they've got everyone waiting, that as soon as these things get here, they're going in. That'll clean up the project towards the 3rd week of August. Which leads me into 2 other things here. One is the electronic marquee. Some of you were out there to see the demonstration by Daktronics on their board out there. I'd like to get going on an RFP for that so we can get some exact numbers to see what we're looking at. We've got about 120,000 in for monuments, which are the tombstones you see around districts. And we want to go away from that. Every building will have labeled on there what they are. And most districts go with some type of electronic signage that, out by the main entry of what they have. And these signs will be somewhere, this sign will be somewhere in the $50,000 to $70,000 range, depending on what we decide to go with. But I want to get a RFP out so we can get a number on that, unless we totally don't want to go that direction.
Is that the only company that we talked to? Is there any other companies?
Well, the
that
spec will
compete?
be written for other companies too, but,
Yeah.
you know, they're probably the most widely used because they're local too.
It sounds like the one who did our interior one doesn't do this type of
No.
sign, so they can't do it. There are other people,
So-
some crafters.
And again, we can reject whatever, you know, we're just getting this thing out so we get some pricing on it at that point, so.
And I'll just repeat my concern about that we were presented at St. Croix County with an engineering firm, and part of their presentation involved explaining that school systems are going away from lit signs because they lead to distracted driving and accidents, so, but I'm just one.
They said school districts are going away.
Yeah, because you're looking at it
Yeah.
instead of
Reading
the
it.
kids in front of you
Right.
crossing at a roundabout. You're
Yeah.
looking at the
Looking
sign.
at that besides not texting, you know, so you're not texting.
You can
and
still
you're
text.
looking at the sign. I'm just joking.
Now, there's people working in town to try and get 2 more to tie in with the school's sign, just to keep people at the entrances of the town, what's going on in the community and school.
I don't think there's any harm getting an RFP out for them, so,
Okay.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, you can reject them.
Right.
The other piece is that financially, you know, I think we're gonna end up probably $1.5 million plus in our construction budget, which has to be spent over the next 2 years. And we really wanna look hard at this piece out here, getting rid of that building and creating parking out here. We see it as a safety issue with these kids running back and forth and parents dropping off. We can move all the garbage and everything away from here, garbage trucks and bins, you know, so they're not backing up here constantly and what have you. So the kids would come up, they'd get off right on the sidewalk and come in the building rather than getting dropped off down the corner there. That's another piece I'd like to get a price on, just to see where we're at. Actually, what it would create, you know, because we could create it and leave this building here for now, but if we can find a better place for that building, that just opens this whole thing up to parking and, you know, whatever future projects you want to do, as long as we have the money. So it's okay, I'd like to go out for an RFP just to get some numbers on that also to see. And that's something that maybe we wouldn't do it this year, maybe we'd wait till next summer. So I'm really leery about adding any scope to jobs right now, because then they have an excuse to not finish on time, so.
What do we use that building for right now?
The building is used for our vehicles and some other storage that we have. It's cold storage, and when this building was built, it was just plopped down on top of the parking lot. There's no, you know, the posts go down, but there's no separate concrete slab or anything, and we wouldn't go as high as this. We don't need that big of a building. We need more stalls for the vehicles that we have, but we don't need, you know, this one served its purpose. It's dinged up pretty good too. I don't know, how old is it,
20
George?
years old.
Yeah.
I'd say it's 20 years.
So again, just, I'd like to get some pricing so we know what we're looking at, for that, if that's okay.
And both of those projects come under the scope of the referendum.
Right, see, there's things that we pulled off when, you know, if you remember right, when we first started the project, our estimates were about $1 million, $1.5 million over. And then when the bids came, you know, so we tweaked the, you know, the scope, and then it all came in under, you know, significantly. So now, you know, there's some of these things that we can add back in to it. And
Yeah,
still be.
and one thing we promised was a safer, cleaner environment for kids. And that certainly would involve safety, getting out on a sidewalk and avoiding walking through a parking lot.
You know, fixing the track, bleachers, that's outside of the scope of the original one. You know, that would be a stretch. You could probably call health and safety and use it there, but again, that would be pretty thin. So,
Okay.
again, just my suggestions there. We'll get these prices that we can talk about them. I think that's all I have about Bob, you wanna talk about the roundabout timeline?
Sure. So they'll do some mobilization, bring equipment in this week. They will start, next week, pulverization and just some general site excavation. That'll run through September 7th, when they anticipate the binder lift driving asphalt, to be done. So, looks like we could potentially toy with a week of traffic on gravel, or encouraging them to take a different route. But we're gonna really stress to the contractor to work as long hours as he can now to avoid getting into the school traffic. So I think he understood the urgency, and so hopeful that we can have everything done, and that binder lift on that roundabout prior to the 8th.
And we'll have
That's
to,
our goal.
depending on how far it goes in, to the year that we're gonna have to work on pedestrian, we had a lot of walkers, how are we gonna get them? So that, we just have to monitor that and make a call on that probably a few days before we open, just to see where they are on that, if we have sidewalks or, so. Anything else on construction? Bruce, anything from our meetings?
The only thing that I guess I wasn't aware of is that some of our second, when we approved the upgraded furniture, the second set of furniture, that won't be on site until, I think, October, November, that second batch, so there will be some furniture that will be replaced in the building later. The stuff we bought with the contract is coming on time, but then the second batch that we approved later, obviously was a month behind, so it'll probably be a little bit later in there.
And I knew about that, I was on another call during the meeting there, so I couldn't address it at the time, but yeah, we knew that was gonna happen with that second order.
But, I mean,
Plus, we've got, we gotta figure out what to do with all the stuff, we got trailers too. So, we got a lot of, we're gonna probably have a big sale at some point in time. Because again, we're trying to keep people with as minimal desks and things in their rooms right now to create, physical distancing as much as possible. So even some of the new furniture is not going to be actually used right away, so.
people are gonna need it at home for distance learning.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe we can ship out some desks there.
Next time.
That's all I have on.
Okay, did anybody have any questions from our construction update? School reopening update?
Okay, I know no one's interested in this, but I'll offer a few suggestions here. Actually, we feel bad about so many surveys and things like that, but that's the only way we have a way to figure out what's going on here. Right now, our big issue is staffing. And preliminarily, what we've seen so far, I think we had around 250 plus respond to this last survey about choice. And the numbers aren't very different than our survey back in July. So we're seeing they're about the same.
Okay.
They're running about 94% face-to-face. Okay, so again, we'll see what the numbers are and what the comments are as they come in. So we'll have that information on the 17th also, but that'll be driving. We really needed to know, what, there was gonna be an increase in virtual and distance learning, because again, that would affect our staffing, and we have some staff that, that are questioning coming back, but if there's an opportunity, and if it fits, great, but again, it has just a lot of things up in the air. And again, all the districts are going through the exact same thing right now, just trying to zero in on what's going to happen. And every MBC school is going face-to-face. All 8 of us are face-to-face with a virtual option, virtual or distance option. Some of those options look a little different than ours do, but they're still offering that piece there. So we're on the same trajectory. I mean, we haven't changed our recommendation yet as far as to a hybrid or distance or what have you. I mean, we're moving forward, preparing for face-to-face, but again, we're also preparing for the inevitable, if that happens, that we have to be, prepared for distance and virtual. And, as across the river, things, they're getting more edicts over there than we are. It's what basically been left in our hands. And so as a conference in surrounding schools, we're trying to find some common ground here. The other piece on that survey was transportation. And again, other districts are seeing a high opting out of district transportation, which again, will help us with the, the whole physical distancing. And you're gonna hear us say physical distance rather than social distance. Social distance kind of like we're creating outcasts and we don't want to be by people socially, but physical distancing, that's what we plan on calling this. We're probably going to come to you on the 17th on some type of decision-making factor for exceptions to the mask rule, and other districts are fighting with this also, are wrestling with this also as far as medical excuses or like in the exception list that the governor has out here, in educational settings. So with what that tells us is that in a classroom, if you have, create that physical distance, the teacher, you can you can teach without your mask if you can maintain that physical distancing, but, you know, as soon as you're done speaking, the mask goes on. If you're on the halls, mask goes on, and what have you. And again, the closer we adhere to these things, you know, hopefully we can keep our schools open and, you know, get things on a normal track again. You know, and everyone's worried about, you know, policing it and, you know, what have you. You think cell phones is bad, this is, you know, gonna be a tough one. What are the consequences? And those are things we want you to weigh in also. And we'll have, by then, we'll have some protocols down and some choices to be made. And that's what I mean, on the 17th, we'll have to, you know, draw some lines in the sand on some things, and we'll prepare you for that. Today, you know, we had a meeting, all MBC soups were together from 9 to 11, then we had the ADs come in. And Trent, if you wanna give a little update on that portion of it, because this is where it ties into activities and conference.
Yeah, so as Dr. Vizek kind of alluded to earlier, one of the interesting things with this is you have 3 counties that encompass the Middle Border Conference. So what schools in Pierce County are being told they can and can't do differs to St. Croix County, to Polk County, right? So the consensus within the conference is that we want to proceed with fall sports and activities as scheduled unless we get told otherwise from county health that we couldn't proceed. So we spent a great deal of time today coming up with a framework for what the seasons could look like for us at the local level. Obviously, the WIA met last week or the week before and announced the delayed start to the seasons. So the big thing that we're still waiting on them for is they have a meeting on August 14th, and we should learn at that meeting what postseason or like the tournament series might or might not look like. There's talk that there could potentially be a state tournament, but there's also talk that it could all be regionally based to keep schools competing at their regional level. So we don't have those answers yet, that'll come later on, but we spent a great deal of time today coming up with a framework of what could our seasons look like with an idea of we want to compete against middle border schools. So obviously delaying the season for football, boys soccer, volleyball, and girls golf. Now you're trying to get potentially more games in a shorter window. So it's not necessarily as possible that we could get a full amount of games in, but we're trying to do everything we can to get as many games as we possibly can. Some really good ideas that were floating around with each sport to try to get as many as we can, but the consensus in the room is that we want to have our kids back and playing unless we get told otherwise at this point.
One of the concerns with this is that if we don't have activities and sports, community groups are gonna start them up. And I'd rather have them under our, you know, supervision and guidance than just pick up teams and pick up games, or you know, somebody wants to start a league or something, what have you, and that will happen. That was a lot of talk on that. The other thing, just to let you know, not all the soups are aligned on this one here. Out of the 8, 2 of them are adamantly against any fall sports. So there's even, a lot of hard discussions going on right now. Anything else on that one, Trent? Okay. So we plan, with the mask rule, and that we're planning on purchasing a mask. We've had a design mask for Somerset, one for each student and one for each employee, and then the rest are on their own. We do have a supply of 40,000 masks as far as backup and emergencies and what have you, but we just feel that, with this coming on, help the families out, I think Dave priced them out, they're like $350 a piece or $375, we could also order more and sell them too, to kind of defray that if we wanted to. I think if people see them, they're probably gonna like them, but again, that's just a direction we thought we needed to go with the mask piece. And I think the last thing on this, Abby, I was just gonna ask you, put you on the spot here a little bit about status with our nursing situation, because that ties right into our school startup.
Yeah, we are going to be interviewing this week. Actually, we have 2 fully qualified, look great candidates that we're gonna be interviewing this week. And then we also are interviewing We had a handful of candidates for the nurses' health aid position, so we're gonna also interview this week, so please keep your fingers and your toes crossed.
And I did meet with Lisa Ramsey this last week, and she would like to be on the interview. She said she would, and she will sign on to do it via our doctor of record, also down the road here. So the plans we put out back in July, the last survey piece we put out, I think even in June, the first plan, really not much has changed, but we're monitoring the situation. And again, we could be in a totally different spot on the 17th, but again, we'll just monitor this and hopefully we'll get some more information from the county to make some more, better informed decisions. But again, if I could encourage anyone out there listening that hasn't filled out that survey, please fill it out, so we count on this data. It really helps us, drive our decisions. So, questions or comments on our strategy so far?
How has summer school been going?
Great. There hasn't been any instances at all. Anyone that has been tested, and again, I think we had between students and staff, we probably had 6 or 7 people get tested. Everything was negative. So, Trent, do you want to talk about the athletic program so far?
It's been going great. It's been a good thing for kids to be back in our facilities. I can't state that enough. It's been good for our kids, it's been good for our staff. Obviously, and were we expecting a mandate to come down last week from the governor saying masks are required? No, we weren't. And sitting in our meeting today, you go around every single athletic director, kids in their weight rooms were wearing masks. It's one of those things that comes down to us. We are anticipating the WIA to come out with sport-specific guidelines in the next week or two, even before their August 14th meeting, that can help provide a framework for practice and things like that. But it's been a positive thing for kids and for coaches.
Now, one thing when the governor puts out these edicts and what have you, it takes us a while to figure out what it means. And this came out Friday and we got word out the best we could. But again, there's always things that tail a lot of questions, and it takes us a few days to really wriggle things out. And so we're still looking for answers on quite a few things in that, but again, do the best we can.
So, you said the 8 middle border schools are going back face to face. Is that 5 days a week?
Yep. Yeah.
Have we, Somerset, looked at the AB schedule? Have we looked at a Monday, Tuesday with a smaller group to keep our class sizes down, and then virtual 3 days?
That's called a hybrid, and you already said we aren't looking at a hybrid.
We've talked about all these different scenarios, and again, they're really situational. You'll see some of the bigger schools. The only one that we know that's doing something different is River Falls right now. They're doing 2 days on, cleaning day Wednesday, 2 days off. Bigger school. Menominey's looking at something different also, but otherwise, and I think the general thought is that we're going into this, until we have problems, and we've got several different avenues of how to deal, layer levels to take care of kids that are going out. My thought is that if this gets to a number, and if we're looking at 15-20%, we shut down. That's when we look at how do we come back, is we look at hybrid scenarios.
I guess I'm just thinking, Minnesota, don't they have right now, if you're in a county that has X number of students, then you need to have a hybrid model. So just trying to think of Wisconsin following suit, doing the same thing. Are we gonna fit that category if our numbers start to spike, or if a different Pierce County starts to spike? I mean, are we gonna just follow that same mandate?
Well, the choice that if we don't get guidance from the county, then.
Well, I'm just saying, do we want to have we looked at that so that we're not caught off guard when it does happen? Like, this is what it looks like. We need to have our teachers, our staff need to have virtual ready, because we could have a hybrid situation where we have a 2 days on, 3 days of virtual.
We could, we're not that big, we're pretty flexible. We can set a schedule up in no time at all. But right now, the reality of it is, how are we gonna open up face to face? And that's what we're focusing on right now, because there's still a lot of issues surrounding that as far as, we have some staff that are gonna opt for that year off, how are we gonna backfill? We still don't know what's gonna happen with band and choir yet. That was a discussion that we had today also, as far as, if, the Pierce County says no band or choir. We don't have that directive here. So we're gonna be relying on music educators and, our own, and, what does it look like here? I mean, I've seen some of the data on those things, but those are things that we're hoping we get some direction on, and it'll all come into the mix. Now, again, getting back to your A, B, or hybrid, whatever, those are not tough things to do. It's just, okay, what's it gonna look like here? And right now, we've been spending our time on face-to-face and virtual distance.
Yeah.
But I do believe if that shutdown comes, when we come back, it'll definitely be in some type of hybrid.
Because aren't we supposed to, I mean, technically, isn't the state part of that mandate, didn't it say no more than 10 people in a class?
I don't know where that came
Or in a
from,
room,
because
isn't it
that's,
more than 10 people?
we're not under any of that. That hasn't even been talked about for, when it first came out last spring, there was that 10-person deal.
Yeah.
And then when that whole thing got overruled by the Supreme Court, that just kind of whoosh. I haven't heard another word about that 10-person thing. In fact, I put it out to the soups this afternoon. Have you heard anything about 10-person? No, not at all. So.
Well, that is the recommendation on the St. Croix County Health Department website, no more than 10 people in a room.
Then,
Yeah, I know, we're over it.
so.
What's the status on the community meeting, getting back together?
The
community meeting?
Yeah, well, as soon as we gather our data and we, again, right now, nothing's changed. Hopefully by the 17th, nothing has changed. And then, but, maybe there will be, a reason to get back together in that. So right now, again, there's nothing in our world has changed as far as masks. That's the only thing that, and that's a lightning issue for everyone right now. But we don't have much to say about that. I mean, what's that?
There's nothing we can do about that.
Well, yeah, there isn't, and that decision's been made for you.
Yeah.
So.
Well, back to what Bruce was asking, so let's just say if we did we hit the threshold at the high school, but the elementary and middle school, we weren't seeing any, would we elect just to say high school, we're gonna take a pause and keep the middle school and elementary school active?
So that's one of our strategies, again, it's situational. Where's the outbreak, what's happening? So we could very easily say middle school, high school, virtual distance. We could take the elementary, spread them out around 3 buildings. I mean, that's an option. We've talked about that also. Again, those plans, if we see this coming, can be put into place pretty quickly. And it's been our whole world.
Relatively quickly? You put in place relatively quickly? Is that a yeah, or I'm just gonna agree with my boss?
No. We've been over and over probably 25 different scenarios of specifically regarding hybrid.
Yeah.
Right, because what makes sense for the elementary school doesn't make sense for the middle school, high school, vice versa, right? So I would say yes, because I think we have some contingency plans ready if hybrid becomes a thing. I want to reiterate, we've been spending more of our time on
Well, this makes.
mitigating the face-to-face, 5 days in person, and how do we make that work, because that's kind of been the direction we've been going. But I think we'd be remiss not to have something really close in our back pocket, especially when, you're running the type of schedule we run at the high school, for example, that takes some tricky planning, right? So.
I'm not trying to be difficult here, I'm just.
These are really good questions. These are questions that people are asking us at the grocery store, so like, I totally get it.
Where do you think I'm getting?
Yeah, I know, I get it, it makes sense, and I think people wanna know, and they wanna know that, what are the discussions that we're having, because we're planning for lots of scenarios, it's just, the one constant has been constant change, right, so it's been tricky, but.
Like you said, we just don't wanna end up in crisis mode again.
Yeah.
Trying to
Yeah.
backpedal our way.
So, I'm sorry, Mark, did you say that, you're waiting for the public health recommendations, kind of guidelines on percent of students out, or, and you haven't gotten that? So I'm wondering, will DPI be sending anything out via the state health department with recommendations?
You know, everything that we've heard is, it's coming down to the county. And, you know, again, it's like Trent was mentioning, Pierce County is giving some pretty stern recommendations or advice. I don't know, I was trying to listen to 2 meetings at once this morning, so I didn't catch, Kelly caught a lot of grief today in our superintendent's meeting. So I'm imagining as we get closer to the start of school, we're gonna start maybe seeing some. But again, we're in the planning stages now, so we just have to be really flexible.
Well, I'm just thinking that they should be putting out guidance too, because they're supposed to know schools.
Well, that's the conundrum we're in
I
right
feel
now.
your pain. This is crazy.
Well, no one's been through this before, you know, we're doing the best we can with the information we have.
Yeah.
Mark, can you speak a little bit to the lockers versus backpacks decision, and maybe is it temporary just to see how things go, or I know a lot of people are
You
concerned
know, that was a
about
question I wanted to ask today, and I didn't get a chance to from the other superintendents, and that just what policies or you know, protocols are putting in place. And right now, you know, I think, you know, Pam, you're saying the cubbies are okay to use, they can limit access to those in the elementary school and that. You know, right now our thinking is that, you know, we want to try to eliminate anywhere where kids are gonna congregate and not create that physical distance. And locker bays are traditionally something that where, you know, kids meet and hang out. So unless Sarah and Shannon can come up with a way of using them and restricting, you know, how many people are in those areas, it's just really not a good idea. You know, although now, you know, we do have the mask situation that we have, so that, you know, we're gonna meet tomorrow morning, and every time we get together, we chisel away a little bit deeper on some of these things. You know, so we can come to that 17th and say, you know what, we've thought about this thing for the last month and a half, and here's these items that we think need to be in concrete, so parents have at least a couple of weeks to react to, you know, choices of shopping and things like that. You know, but now we're all in the same same boat together as far as with physical distancing, masks and what have you, so that's off the table, so.
maybe if maybe a month into it, and hopefully we're not seeing any problems, that maybe we can look at it on, you know, a month in or 3 weeks in or something like that is a possibility.
Yep. Oh, definitely, this is fluid. You know, we'll react to what the numbers say and what you know, what's out there. You know, I think we're fortunate we're in the area we're in, we're seeing low incident, what have you. So,
In St. Croix County.
yeah, Somerset area, yeah.
Being that so much is online though, with the instruction, they're not carrying around the amount of textbooks that they did 5 years ago, right? Like, the backpack doesn't weigh what a college backpack weighs, which is what I think a lot of us parents are assuming. Is it smaller? Do they have a lot of textbooks that they're carrying around still, or?
So I would say it depends. Really depends on their class load. There are some kids that may have 1 textbook. There are some that could have 5. If they're taking AP this and AP this, and, you know, I mean, it just, as a general statement, you know, some of it's gonna be, I think, just some conversations we have with our kids about, okay, I can tell you after cleaning out lockers at the end of the year, you know, that having some conversations about how do we kind of lighten that load a little bit, right? And, but I think you bring up a good point. I don't think any of us want this to be forever. You know, 3 weeks in, a month in, whatever that looks like, trying to see if we can get back to using those spaces, you know, just temporary for now, but, and have some conversations with kids about what to carry, and are there some creative ways that you could keep a textbook in XYZ classroom, so there's less, you know, back and forth, I mean, just, so we're having some of those conversations, it's just, again, on the list of, it's not ideal, and see if we can make it work for the short term.
And then you leave books in the classroom, then you get into the shared, you know, you don't wanna do that either, so we're trying to weigh this all out. And I agree with Shannon, after cleaning it, I went through every locker in high school last year, and if anyone ever orders another book that weighs 30 pounds, like these science books and things like that, it's just, I think, you know, books are soon becoming a thing of the past, textbooks, because everything's so computer electronically generated and what have you.
And the kids, elementary kids, don't they have like paper word books
Yeah,
that are,
printed
they're
out.
not, yeah, they're not carrying around textbooks and.
Right. Well, and I don't know if it is something that we have to do, if there's a hierarchy where AP kids, or people that have 5, 10 can actually get access to a locker in every fourth locker or something like that, that we could do for the kids that do have a heavier load to carry around.
Yeah.
But
I think that's a good point, because we anticipate there will be exceptions for a variety of reasons, and, you know, and maybe something like that is a really good thing to add to the list of, we don't want kids carrying around backpacks that weigh 50 pounds, right? So, yep.
Does anybody have any questions or other comments about the reopening update? All right then, item 11, topics for action. The first item is the personnel update. Would anybody like to make a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
second.
Are you talking about intakes right now?
I'm talking about the entire personnel update. So we have a motion to approve and a second. Is there any discussion on this item?
Is this the time at which we would talk about Renee's position?
You can talk about it here, but it's down on item C.
Well, it's in the personnel.
It's in the
update, too,
personnel.
Oh, is it in there?
as an exit.
Oh, okay. Yeah, wherever.
Did you have a question about
I
that?
guess I'm just, it took me by surprise. And being new to the board, I don't really know the protocols for these types of things, so maybe I just don't understand. My experience with Renee has been what, Gretchen mentioned. So I guess I'd like to discuss that a little more
Okay.
if we can.
Yep.
I don't, maybe I'm
No,
off
I can
base,
give you,
don't
I can
know.
give you history if you want me to give you history, okay?
Go ahead.
You know, this is not a Renee issue. If it was, we'd have a closed session right now. It isn't. This was a temporary position that we added back when our previous activities director, towards the end, you know, we had some struggles and what have you, and we needed help.
Well, there was an assistant position that the person left. A person left.
Right, I was gonna get to that.
Okay.
So his assistant had left, taken a job in another district, so there was, that person was helping out with activities, and I think also counseling too, was doing some duties there also. So John was leaving the district at the time, so we needed somebody to come in and help out. Renee, you know, said, hey, you know what, you know, she had the experience, we needed help. It was, again, a temporary position, and was such at a salary that was more than the last person was making, because we needed the help at the time. And Renee did a great job. You know, we added community ed to that piece also, which is what we're recommending dropping for this year, because we just really want to limit the people in our buildings, again, which, when you look at the finances of it, you know, for the work that's being done now, it just doesn't make sense. It's all clerical work right now. Trent's in here, Trent's doing a great job. I mean, that position served its purpose at the time. And again, it was only temporary until the human resources study was completed. And then even the contract says that, the wage scale that we base our salaries on, you know, there was a line item there that this will be eliminated, what have you. So it's no surprise, it's just the time has come where we can use these resources in other areas and that. And we'll save $25,000 in the Fund 80 budget with community ed, and I can put another full-time person on, as an assistant with George for that. So it's a kind of a win-win all the way around. There's other positions that I encourage her to look at. She could apply for that position that works with George, or there's other full-time sub positions, other things around the district. This is by no means a Renee issue. It's common sense dollars and cents pieces and reallocating resources.
Can I ask a question to Trent? What does that position bring, being the assistant principal plus the athletic director, what does that position bring to you? What are you losing?
I'm sorry.
What are you losing in that position with, because now everything will be on you, so.
Well, I wouldn't necessarily say everything would fall directly on me. As Dr. Bezick had said, like, there's a lot of clerical things that go on. I mean, and I obviously can't state this enough. It's not about the person, it's about the position piece of it, right? So yeah, we will look internally within the district and different responsibilities that we have to be accounted for.
So some of the, in a new position that would go, some of the duties that were in that position at the high school that she was doing will continue on with that person that would, in that new position. There's several things, scheduling buildings, there's, a number of different pieces that will also go along that won't disappear. So the load, there are some things that are gonna spread out amongst the office over there also. Again, as I mentioned before when we had this discussion about getting help for George, we always try to look internally. How can we reallocate or reuse our staff? And again, this is a perfect example of that position served its purpose at time, and now we've got a bigger need elsewhere.
Well, I'm a little confused about why that position came back up on here as a topic for action when the board had already weighed in on that position. And nothing had happened until we got an email this weekend. And I feel like we're just bringing it back up again a few weeks later, only at the expense of somebody else. And I don't think that's, the board weighed in. I'm not happy.
Well, I'm not happy either because we got someone who needs help here. We've got a way to reallocate resources. This was a temporary position to begin with. Granted, it should have been listed for discussion tonight and action on the 17th, but we're up to our necks and trying to find people for different positions and acting as quick as we can. If you want to delay it, that's fine. That's my recommendation, is we reallocate these resources to a place where we need them better.
I agree with Katie. I wish it had been a discussion item, because this is a work session, and then we could have had, and it had been on their agenda quite a while ago, so we could have had some thought about it. So I have no idea what to say about this yet. I need some time to think about it, and I think it should be a discussion item, not, if we want to bring it forward for action at a board meeting, fine, but it should have been a discussion item on this agenda. Not on action.
About A, or are you talking about C?
Well, they're intertwined, so I don't know how to answer that.
Well, I just say
I couldn't agree more with Catherine.
on C, Bob and I were discussing last time, or Bob brought up, let's see what happens, see what semester 1 looks like with the new systems, and we'll bring it back in semester 2. And I know, like, Mark bringing it back up, Dr. Beasley bringing it back up, and Dave, obviously needs the help, but with all the positions we're adding and everything, the unknowns, I think it was, let's see what happens in 6 months before we bring it up again, and now we're 2 weeks.
There it is.
It's a cost savings to the district. If you don't, you know what, we always talk about being responsible with our dollars, that's why it's on there.
Is Renee's position part-time right now? Or the position she was in, is it part-time or is it full-time?
It's part-time. It's 4 point,
0.43?
something like that.
I'm just wondering, you know, with her, the duties, kind of the organizational duties within the athletic department that she does now, help for George, maybe some online learning administration, because that's gonna be a new, animal this year. Kind of COVID protocols mitigation, maybe just, you know, she could be somebody that could be a sort of a utility player in things that come up that we need for COVID mitigation. I don't know, I guess I would like to talk about how we can reallocate her in some way. I don't, or, I know she's been encouraged to apply for the office aide 1 position, so I'm glad that was an encouragement. I don't know, I guess I would like to discuss this more.
Yeah, I don't even know, so 0.43, which portion is AD and which portion is community ed?
Split in half.
Good luck. Split 0.43. I'm not that good at math, but that's an odd number. 21.9?
Yeah.
And who knows what's gonna happen with athletics this year? I mean, I know like in the spring, she had to refund all the athletes, you know, fees and everything, and I don't know, I guess I wanna think about this one. I
So
don't know.
21.5 is the community ed, and that's the piece that's going away.
We're recommending that why would we have it this year?
Correct,
It's
I
just-
get
it's
that.
just-
Yep, and I just wish this had been a discussion item.
Well, it is, I mean, we can,
Yep.
I mean, you know, I should have put discussion, possible action on there. You know what, we're scrambling to get things done, you know.
Okay, so we have a personnel update with more than just one position on it. Bob, you made the motion. Would you like to vote on this motion as it stands, or
Let
would
me
you like to
grab-
amend it?
Let me grab the agenda, I was looking for a different document real quick.
When we talk about nurses' aides, do they have to have a, medical background? Do they have to be?
I think they have to
actually,
take-
like,
yeah, be
CNA or something?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve Heather Hines, Emily Saltenberger, Becky Gostovich, as intakes. And make a motion to accept Emily Zahn's resignation.
And there's some changes as well.
Yep.
So would you like to,
I'll get to that one, and as well as Kristen Cisco and Jen Gibbonson's assignment changes.
all right, so you've amended the motion. And would you like to add your second, Patty Jo?
I will keep my second there.
Is there further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
So noted. We are done. We are on to item in B then, athletics activities personnel update. Would anybody like to make a motion to
I'll make a
approve
motion.
that?
To approve item 11B.
Second.
Any discussion on the athletics activities personnel update? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item C, recommend the school board approve the staffing request as presented. Would anybody like to make a motion?
I would like to make a motion to table that for further discussion, at least October work session, because we're too full with stuff starting up. Or do we think the August 31st one would be
that's September's work session, but that's gonna be full with startup stuff, so. We do October work session?
The only problem with that is was this taking effect?
Her position was eliminated on August 31st, but that's the same day as that meeting.
Okay, yeah, I forget, September work session's in August.
Yes.
Yeah, gotcha, okay.
But we didn't, yeah, so.
Are we anticipating adding a meeting in light of all the talking points with the reopening, that we potentially could have that advanced to
Yeah.
an earlier?
Will you mean another one? Well, we have 3 in August. We have today, the 17th and the 31st. Are you talking about in August or
In
September?
September.
We already have 3 scheduled for September also.
Sure.
Well, I mean, not 3, I guess.
Well, we have 2, but.
August 31st, or September 7th, and, no, not September 7th, September 14th, and, so would you like to add one in September?
Well, I'm just saying, Patty Jo was struggling with the October, but,
Well, I was fine with October, I just didn't know if anyone else was, or waiting 2
But
work sessions.
I was just saying, we maybe have an opportunity to have it earlier.
Right.
Who knows?
So would you like to amend your motion to just table it at this time
I would
without
just-
giving a specific date?
I would like to table it at this time without giving a specific date.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
So then, maybe we're past it, but does the personnel of Renee's, does that go on, now do we discuss that on the regular meeting?
It could be an action item. If we've discussed it here, we've had discussion.
Then we'll put it
What's
on as
the-
an action
Well,
item.
we had discussion, but without much time for consideration. I don't know that I'd be good with that.
What's the board's preference?
Are you sure we can't put it on August 31st?
Yeah, I'd like to put it in August.
Hers on August 31st.
So
So-
does that mean she stays on?
I
So
agree with
then-
Katie.
Well, right now, the date on the personnel update that we did not approve was that her position continued until August 31st anyway.
Okay,
That makes sense.
alright.
So
And then
this
it doesn't
item will
remain.
come back as a discussion item for August 31st.
Yeah.
Would you like it to be listed as simply discussion, or would you like it to be listed as discussion with possible action?
I think we could list it as, in my opinion, discussion of possible action,
Yep,
but only if Patty Jo approves.
I approve.
Are we able to change that description, I guess?
I think that was what I was gonna say. Is there a way to just kind of modify it and get George's supporting aides as well as maintaining some support
Right.
to Trent? And just kind of try to reclassify some job duties because the majority of the board values Renee and her working knowledge. Is that a practical way, instead of going out to create a new position and hire, is that something that you feel would be attainable?
You can do whatever direction, but you're paying for clerical help at a much higher rate than you would pay in.
Can the position be changed?
Right, as I'm asking, is some duties be rearranged, so community ends off the table, let's add potentially some other duties to her. And approach it that direction, so.
Sure, we can look at it, it's just, again,
I just don't wanna, I guess I'll be honest, I just wanna come back August 31st with the same, we get the horses
Bring
dead.
us some options.
Well, my question is, can the position be changed to reflect the clerical nature of it so that it is in the category that you were talking about in the original staffing request? That it would still be, I don't remember exactly what it was a level something.
And that's what we're trying to do, is to create, eliminate this position
Mhm.
and create this position, which she could apply for, but it's at a different rate and it's full-time.
Mhm.
And that's the idea.
Another question I have is what percentage is building and grounds and what percentage are the duties that Renee was currently doing? Do you know those?
Well, right off the top of my head, George, you guys worked on a job description. I'm just thinking it's about 30-70, probably 30% of what was the needs in the high school in that area, and the rest was George's time.
Because another thing I'd like the board to discuss is going ahead and approving the 30% to take the duties at the high school, and then continuing with the suggestion that we had made originally at the July 20th meeting, where we waited 6 months before deciding on building and grounds. That was what was discussed July 20th.
Bob was, or it was you, Bruce, but I don't think it was 6 months.
It was Bob. I went back and looked. 1 hour, 45 minutes.
That's how long I talked?
No, that's
That was somebody else.
the part in the meeting where it came up. If you'd like to go back and check.
No, but, in light of that, I just wanna make some progress on things.
You know, so there were several ideas that were brought up and discussed. So I hope we can make some progress on August 31st.
Yeah, we can do some more thinking on it, but again, I get why is this person doing clerical and getting paid this much, and I'm only getting paid, you know how that works around here, and,
I
I'm
completely
trying to create a
understand.
balanced
I don't mean
plan.
to be a troublemaker. I completely understand where I understand what you're saying. I just think, let's give it some more thought and see what we can come up
I
with.
think that's the value of having a conversation about just getting through those pieces.
Any more discussion on this item? All right then, number 12, once around the table. Patty Jo, do you have anything?
I do. Can we get a tour of the schools before?
School starts,
Yeah.
like August 31st?
Yeah.
Well, definitely,
Okay, that's something, I mean, just,
yeah, no, it's,
I'd like to see the finished product.
yeah. Yeah, but I mean, everything's
just
in
wanna make sure
concepts
it's
in the
done.
head. Well, that also.
well, we would love to have a community open house, but that defeats the purpose of,
Right.
at some point in time, we will.
Okay.
But,
Second, for policy stuff,
Yes.
we need to review the Title IX policy on sexual harassment, sex discrimination, and sexual assault due to the changes that are coming up here next week. So that's something we need to put on the policies page.
And there were some others that I had sent out an email about that are required to be reviewed annually. I don't have a list of them
That's a
in
big
front
one.
of me, but I can send that out to Tasia. Bob? Catherine?
Did there used to be on the agenda somewhere, a motion to approve the agenda?
You are absolutely right, Catherine.
And it's
usually-
missing.
It is
I
missing.
didn't hear, what did you say?
There should be on the agenda, someone makes a motion to approve the agenda,
Yes.
and it's missing.
I can look back, Catherine,
You were totally right.
I believe it was always on the regular sessions. I don't recall seeing it on the work sessions. Not saying it can't be added, but I'm happy to look back and just see where that might have fallen off if it did.
Okay, because I would like that on both of them,
Please.
if possible.
Thank you.
That's it.
Bruce?
Just, again, thanking everybody's time to put together another survey and put face-to-face. We asked for it, I asked for it in the last meeting, the protocols for each school, the COVID, so it was done, it's addressed before this meeting, so thanks for taking care of it.
Roxanne?
Super minor, but on our website, the school board, section, buried, nobody probably sees it, but there's a public notice hereby given, some members of the school board may occasionally attend social events, blah, blah, blah. School board will not conduct any governmental business during these events. I just, when I read that, I know that the feedback from the survey from staff was that they wanted us to be more communicative. And to me, that looks like they shouldn't talk to us out in public, which I would welcome. Somebody asking me questions in public, I may not answer them. I may say, I can't comment on that, but I'll take it to the board. I just think it makes us look like we shouldn't be approached. Personally, I don't mind being approached, but I don't know how you guys feel about that. I'm just wondering if we can remove that, or if there's some sort of legal reason it's on there.
That's never come up before.
No, you can, it doesn't really mean that. It means that, if there's a quorum of board members, you can't discuss. But you can certainly talk to anybody in the public as long as it's not a confidential matter.
Okay.
It doesn't restrict, if all 7 of you are at the same social event, you can still be there, you just can't conduct and talk business. That's basically what it is.
Okay.
So it's not referring to a single board member being at a social event?
It does say some members of the board may occasionally attend.
Right.
I don't know, I
It
just
just
felt
means
that,
you can't convene at like a basketball game and be talking
Right.
business. But you could talk to me as a citizen.
it's probably, it definitely can stay, I just thought it kind of looked like when we've been asked to be more communicative, it kind of said, don't talk to us, but I get what you're saying too, that it's more of a quorum.
But it is confusing. I can see why some people might have that impression. Would anyone like to make a motion to adjourn?
Can I have a chance?
Oh, I'm sorry, Kitty, you weren't here, I'm sorry.
So just real briefly, a year or so ago, with these Neola policies, we had inquired if a board member could have access so we can see it, what policies are available. And at that time, the board, I don't know, for whatever reason, did not allow it. And I feel like, given some recent concerns about policies that haven't, been put forward to the board, I would just like to have on our agenda, I don't know when, you guys, but I would like us to talk about that again, please. And, there only needs to be one board member working in conjunction with, say, Tasia and Mark, but just to make sure that we're doing our due diligence to review them. So that's all.
Thank you.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.